Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 14th of August of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. First updates are coming from the south of Ukraine, from the Black Sea region, from Kherson area, from Odessa area. As we discussed in the previous video, the Russians made massive missile attack against the settlements, against the Ukrainian positions in Odessa, against the ammo depots, warehouses, and so on. Let's take a look at the video one more time. The results of those strikes. On this video, we see how a person was making a video from his own apartments, and after that, the explosion started everywhere in front of him, very far from him. So as you can see, significant number probably of missiles got their targets, got the military objects and so on, and as a result of those attacks, a lot of things were destroyed. And just one more time, the video of the results of one of those attacks. As you can see, a small mall, not a small, a very big mall was destroyed. That probably, according to the Russians, that they were using this building as a warehouse. Later, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that during the previous night they made a missile attack against the areas and warehouses where the Ukrainians were keeping the Navy drones and the parts of them. So basically the Russians won some time in the battle of the Black Sea. But the story of Odessa and this story hasn't ended. That wasn't the end of the story, let's call it like this, because as I understand, when the Russians were attacking this area with missiles, the Russians were attacking from the ships, from the fleet, from the Black Sea, and probably the Ukrainians, there was a lot of video, by the way. Let's take a look one more time at one of the important video, because this is very important. This is the video shows the work of Ukraine air defense. We see lots of missiles, lots of bullets of our air defense systems. The Ukrainians were trying to shut down everything, and basically we understand that Ukrainians were trying to defend something inside of Odessa, and the most important that something was so important, so the Ukrainians didn't scare to recognize and discover their own air defense positions. And this is the most important, because basically by that air defense work, the Ukrainians shown everything. They shown every single air defense position in the vicinity of Odessa and basically in the south of Ukraine area. And later the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation published a very probably the most interesting and the most, we can say, beautiful video of the day, that as a result of probably morning air defense system, the Ukrainians discovered their S-300 positions, and of course the Russians didn't waste time for free. They destroyed those air defense systems, S-300 systems. The entire squad was destroyed. A lot of probably 3 or 4 launching systems were destroyed. They were, as you can see according to the video, fully packed, and this is significant losses of Ukrainian forces. As soon as the Russians realized that they managed to surprise the Ukrainian air defense system, as I understand, that was not the only S-300 system, not only one air defense system that was destroyed. The Russians continue bombing and shelling the southern area of Ukraine, Kherson, with guided bombs. And also today, somewhere at noontime, the Russians published the video how Su-34 launched 2 guided bombs in direction of Kherson district. This video is geolocated. Basically, according to this video, we see that these Su-34, there was like 2 guided bombs. That Su-34 was located above Kalanchak, the settlement in Kherson. And later we got also the same day today updates of explosions of guided bombs in the area in the vicinity of Kazachye Lagery, probably the area where the Ukrainians were using for landing operation of their infantry in the vicinity of that settlement. Now let's take a look at those explosions. For example, this is the first explosion in the vicinity of Kakhovka-Dem, Kazatska. On this video, we see how probably those guided bombs that were launched by the Su-34 landed, and we see very heavy explosion, probably with significant number of losses from the Ukrainian side. And another video a little bit to the south in the islands, also according to the author, the results of explosion of another portion of guided bombs in this area. So we see the results, we see the situation, but this is probably not the most interesting. The most interesting is the distance of flight of those guided bombs. The video of launching of guided bombs was geolocated and the plane was above Kalanchak. If we calculate the distance between Kalanchak and this bank of Dnieper River, we see that the distance of the guided bombs is around 60 kilometers. So that means that the Russians managed to improve their guided bombs, the Su-34, and currently the Russians have weapon and have technology to attack the Ukrainians with guided bombs within a distance of more than 60 kilometers. Significant result. Currently, this is almost the same result as the Western countries, to be more precise, United States of America have. So we see the GDM bombs and so on. We see the same level of attack, the same level of technology. And the Russians currently are trying to improve and probably will try to increase the distance. Significant video and significant results. One more time, let's talk one more time. The Russians attack Odessa. The Ukrainians try to defend something in the Odessa and they discover their air defense positions. The Russians suppress the Ukrainian air defense positions, probably with drones like Lancet or something like this. After the Russians suppressed the Ukrainian artillery systems, the Russians started bombing and shelling the Ukrainian bank of the river with guided bombs within a distance of 60 kilometers. And basically those positions that the Ukrainians were using for infantry for a previous landing operation in the vicinity of Kazachye Lagery. Now let's move to Kazachye Lagery and let's discuss the situation in detail one more time. The Russians reported that as a result of counter-offensive operation, they managed to force the Ukrainians to step back from this bank of the river. For now, I haven't received any video or photo confirmation of that, at least from the Russian side, but we got the video confirmation from the Ukrainian side. And on this video, we will not see this video till the end because of violence and dead bodies of the Russian soldiers. The only thing that we can see is that there is like a platoon of Russian soldiers who were moving between the Ukrainian, let's say, bridgehead and Kazachye Lagery, and at some point of the video the Ukrainians start bombing and shelling the Russian positions in this area with cluster rounds. We don't know the real results of those attacks and the level of loss of Russian forces, but we see that there was some kind of ambush. We discussed that ambush in the previous videos, if you remember, there was a situation with this bridgehead and the Russian mayor with the squad moved to these positions to figure out what happened, and the major of Russian army was captured by the Ukrainians, and right in a second the major of Russian army published a video how the Russians managed to capture the Ukrainian soldiers. But that was a trick, Ukrainian trick, and after that the major of Russian army disappeared and nobody could establish connection with him. And that was the reason why the Russians took a decision to send reinforcements in this area, and that was the video of that reinforcement who was heading in direction of the bridgehead that, according to Russian official information, was cleared by the major Russian platoon, and that Ukrainians were like forced to step back. But basically that was a trick, that was an ambush by the Ukrainian forces, that was a real operation when the Ukrainians were trying to force the Russians think that everything is under their control, and as a result of that ambush the Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian infantry and to attack them with the cluster rounds. So that was the situation. Currently, as I understand, the Russians managed to fix the issue to force the Ukrainians to step back. At least the sources are saying like this, but let's wait a little bit for more details, and after that we will change the map and we will update the map according to the reality. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area, the Ukrainians lost 30 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles and 1 artillery system. Now we're moving to another, probably the most interesting front line, to Bradley Square, to Zaporizhzhia area. There are very fierce fightings and battles in the northern part. The Ukrainians are pushing, but yet nobody knows exactly what is going on in this settlement. What is going on? Who is winning? Where is the Ukrainian positions? Where is the Russian positions? Whether the Russians control entire Robotyne or just the part? Whether the Ukrainians control the northern part or they were forced to step back? Currently, this area is covered with the fog of war, and neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are giving us any updates, any piece of news. So we don't know exactly. The only thing we can get is some geolocations that somehow managed to break through the fog of war and to appear on the surface of the reality. And when talking about the situation today, we got at least 2 very interesting updates from the settlement. The first one is the post was already deleted. There was a post published by the Ukrainian sources, and according there was a photo, and I have linked that Telegram channel, but as you can see, the author of that Telegram channel also have removed that post. There was the video and photo confirmation that in this area on the northern part of Robotyne, 2 Ukrainian Leopards were destroyed by the Russian fire. So according to at least first post that was deleted, and by the way by the Ukrainian side, there are Ukrainian tanks in the northern part of Robotyne, and there are Ukrainian forces there, and at least as a result of fierce fightings in this area, 2 of those tanks were destroyed under the Russian fire. We don't see this post. This post was deleted by the Ukrainian forces who published that post, but we got another post from the Russian side, and this video is geolocated, and according to this video, the Russians reported that they were bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions in the northern part of Robotyne. So this is the hangar. You see the building on the bottom of the video, and this is the hangar on the map, this one. And the Russians were bombing this corner area, and this is the Ukrainian positions. This is the Ukrainian positions. So basically, in reality, the northern part of Robotyne, as I understand, is under Ukrainian control. The Russian keeps just the central and the southern one. Also, the Ukrainians published the video how they were attacking and bombing the Russians with the drones on the southern and the central part of this area. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published another video how they were attacking and bombing the Russian positions between Kopony and Robotyne. Let's call it the western flank of the Robotyne. We see another drone. The Ukrainians discovered the Russian trenches, but according to this video, I see that the trenches are empty, or the soldiers were hiding. Meanwhile, the drone was flying above them. Anyway, as a result of attack, the Ukrainians probably damaged some artillery positions, machine gun positions in these trenches. Anyway, we see that currently the Ukrainians have once again changed their focus, and currently they're trying to attack in the northern part of Robotyne, in this area, with armored fist in the infantry. Also, the Ukrainians are trying to develop their bridgehead to the west of Robotyne and to attack in direction of Kopony, because more and more updates are coming from this area. Currently, we are not going to change the color of this area because we don't know the real situation. The only facts we see is the drone attacks and some vectors of movements of the Ukrainians. So we're basing our speculation, let's call it even like this, about the vectors and the geolocated videos we have from this area. The Russians continue publishing the videos of Lancet strike and FEP drone strikes in the eastern part of Robotyne, which also a little bit confused because we don't see any movements from the Ukrainian side in this direction, or at least some geolocated videos. That's why I believe that maybe all these attacks against the Ukrainian positions in the eastern part by the FEP drones that were published by the Russians are old videos of old events that took place, let's say in the beginning of August or in the end of July or something like this. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce clashes for Robotyne and Zaporizhzhia area, the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles including 1 tank and 3 artillery systems. Furthermore, the Russians continue counter-artillery duels, and according to information we got, the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian ammo depot and behind Orekhov, and as a result of artillery strike to destroy that ammo depot. Now we are moving further to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. There are also a lot of updates. We got also a lot of updates from this bridgehead. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the video of the Russians who were moving along the road from Urozhain and in direction of Zavitne Bajanye along this street, and we saw the video published by the Ukrainian forces how they were bombing and shelling withdrawn Russian forces, retreating Russian forces with cluster munitions somewhere in this area. But yet the Russians continue providing us information, but still the Russians were continue providing us information that they continue fighting for the south and for the central part of the settlement. And you know that there is a pattern, as we discussed also. If the Russians, we can say that this or that settlement was, or part of this or that settlement was left by the Russians only in case if they start bombing and shelling the settlement with artillery. And today we got at least 2 geolocated confirmations from the Russian side. On this video, we see how the Russians were bombing with the guided bombs, probably the farms on the south of Urozhaina. And this video was made by the Russians, and the author of this video reports that this is the Russian strike. So currently, as you can see, the Russians were attacking this area, somewhere, let's say, from Zavitno-Bazhanye, and the purpose of this attack was to destroy and to reduce fortifications and the strongholds that Ukrainian can use when they capture the Urozhaina completely. So this is the only purpose and only reason of that attack, just to destroy fortifications, just to reduce the work the Russians would need anyway to do if they will ever counterattack back. Furthermore, we got another video from Urozhaina when the Russians were bombing the settlement with missiles, as you can see. Also another evidence that there are no more Russians in this area, and now it's the Russians' hands are free to attack this territory, this bridgehead, with all types of weapons they have. But another interesting detail that yet we haven't received any video confirmation of putting the Ukrainian flag above the town hall. So basically there are also some problems, as I understand. The Russians left a lot of surprises, a lot of things in the settlement, and the Ukrainians are moving very slowly. They try to make clearing the territory, and of course because of very low speed, the Russians have possibility to track the Ukrainians and to attack them with artillery. Anyway, Urozhaina is in the gray zone, or at least under Ukrainian control, but not on the Russians. The Russians regrouped to the south and currently attacking the Ukrainians from this area with all types of weapons they have. The Ukrainians continue controlling the main support roads that goes from Zavitno-Bazhanye to Staromlynovka and attack the Russian movements using the drones. In this video we see how the Russians were moving and redeploying their forces using armored vehicles. The drone discovered the armored vehicle and destroyed and attacked that armored vehicle behind, where we can find the fuel store of armored vehicle, and that armored vehicle basically was destroyed, of course. And another video of cluster attack with cluster rounds and just attack in the settlement. Anyway, if we increase the number of updates since the second half of July, we see the Ukrainian concentration. We see what was the reason of Ukrainian success in the battle of Urozhaina, and basically the success was just because the Ukrainians established 100% control over the Russian supply roads, Russian forces, Russian positions in Staromlynovka and Zavitno-Bazhanye with drone forces, and also they established artillery control over the Russian reserves behind Staromlynovka. So that was the reason of Ukrainian of won of that battle, and of course JDAM bombs as well. But when talking about the Russians, it's not a very big loss of Urozhaina. They did a very great job. They've been holding this settlement for a very long time. The Ukrainians lost significant number of infantry armored vehicles. The sources are saying that just for the battle of Urozhaina these days, the Ukrainians lost up to 1,000 soldiers. We don't know the real numbers of Russian losses, but as I understand, there are much less in comparison with the Ukrainian one. When talking about this area, the Russians reported that as a result of clashes for Urozhaina, as a result of Ukrainian storming offensive operation, about those meat attacks with the horde attacks with the Ukrainian forces, the Ukrainians lost around 240 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. The Russians left Urozhaina, and currently this is the configuration of the front line. Now we are moving further to the South Donetsk area. We haven't received nothing, just one geolocated video. The Ukrainians reported that they managed to discover the Russian armored vehicle somewhere in this area and then bombed this area with a drone and destroy it. So basically this video confirms the Russian positions on the north of Novomikhailivka and the Russian attempts to continue their Russian advances to the south for establishing the fire control over the roads that goes in the settlement of Novomikhailivka. Now we are moving further to Klishchiivka, to Bakhmut, to Artyomovsk frontline. Today we got a lot of very interesting material from this area, videos and so on. If lots of Ukrainian sources, pro-Ukrainian sources, published today a very interesting video on the east of Andreevka, and the Ukrainians were saying that on this video we can see abandoned Russian convoy of armored vehicles. On this video we can see at least 3 tanks and at least 2 armored personal carriers or vehicles that were, according to the Ukrainians, abandoned on these fields. But Military Summer Channel has completely different opinion about the situation. As I see, the tanks are not damaged, and basically the Russian Russians built their attack phase before upcoming offensive operation, which of course took place probably halfway an hour later, and we got the video of that attack. We discussed this video a few days ago, yesterday's I believe. The Russian offensive operation in the southern part of Klishchiivka, successful offensive operation that completed with the clearing of that area and forcing the Ukrainians to step back. So chronologically, at first the Russians moved their tanks in this area, and after that the Russians, after they received an order, started movement to the north in direction of Klishchiivka and cleared that settlement from the Ukrainian forces. The people are saying, so if this is your opinion, then the question why the tanks and armored vehicles are not working, because it's better to keep engine always working. I'm telling you that if we increase the number of updates from this area, let's say from the 23rd of July, we're gonna see that this is another area where the Ukrainians managed to establish 100% control over this area with the drones. The Ukrainians were attacking every single armored vehicle, every single tank, truck with drone massively, and not just once. Probably during the wave from one position to another, one truck was attacked probably with 2 or 3 drones until this or that truck is not destroyed. So the situation is very difficult, and that was the reason why the Russians, when they are, the situation was as follows: the Russian armored fist, the Russian motorized forces got an order to attack Klishchiivka from the south, basically using this direction. And somewhere, let's call it from Zaitsevo, the Russian armored fist started their movement and they get their position in the vicinity of Andreevka. And after that, the Russians dropped their tanks in this area, and we see the video of abandoned tanks. And basically, the Russians, infantry, marines, tank drivers left their armored vehicles and got their positions among the trenches and the forest lines. And the reason of that, because this area, as we discussed, is under complete drone and artillery fire. Of course, as soon as the Ukrainians see the movement of T-90 and armored vehicles, they send dozens and dozens of drones with one purpose: to destroy these armored vehicles. And of course, these attacks could lead to destroy of entire convoy, including infantry and tank drivers. And at some point of attack, the Russians took a decision to unpack these armored vehicles and to go their positions, and the Russians started waiting. And another reason, they turned off the engines, probably to reduce the like hot sign of engines or something like this. It's of course probably reduced the Ukrainian possibilities of navigations, I don't know. And as soon as probably after the Russians complete artillery preparation in Klishchiivka, the Russian forces in those group received an order and started their movement in direction of that settlement and successfully captured that settlement. Then they withdraw their positions and left just infantry and marines inside of the settlement. So that was the situation in the vicinity of Bakhmut. Furthermore, I'll remind you that the Russians reported that recently they have redeployed at least 2 motorized brigades, battalions, and 1 reactive artillery division in this area. And as soon as we see the number of artillery and tanks increase, the Ukrainians also start publishing the videos of attacks against tanks. So, for example, this is another evidence why the Russians left the tank before the attack. For example, in this video we see how the Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian T-80, and as a result of artillery or drone strike, the Ukrainians destroyed the T-80 tank, and so that's it. And if the tank driver was inside of the tank, of course he was killed as a result of that attack. But I believe that, one more time, the Ukrainians, the Russians, are leaving their armored vehicles and try to keep their positions among the fortifications in the vicinity of equipment position or something like this. We also start receiving more updates, some updates from the northern Artyomov flanks, and after 2 weeks of operational pause, we see where the forces of 10th Mountain Assault Brigade continue publishing videos of hunting and attacking the Russian infantry along the railways. I'll remind you that the main Russian goal in this area is to continue advancing along the railways in direction of Vremivka, and basically the Russians are currently destroying everything on their way, but yet without any progress on the ground. And today we got very interesting video from Solidar. The Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian positions, and after that the Ukrainians attacked this area with artillery, and then we see some kind of regrouping of Russian infantry in this area. but yet also without any progress on the ground. Now we're moving to Liman area. The Tarskoye salient has been stabilized, no movements in both directions, neither from the Russians nor from the Ukrainian side. The only video we got is that the Russians, as a result of intelligence by the reconnaissance operation by the drone, managed to discover the Ukrainian M777 howitzer, and as a result of Lancet strike, that howitzer was destroyed. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this area, they managed to repel at least 2 attacks from the Ukrainian side in the direction of Dibrova, and the Ukraine lost around 90 soldiers during the clashes of this area. Now we're moving to the Kupiansk front line. We also got a lot of updates from this bridgehead. The Russians continue attacking the Ukrainians in this area. There was some update about some progress of the Russians in the vicinity of Petropavlovka. Some sources even were saying that the Russians managed to get the outskirts of that settlement, but I see and I understand that that was some kind of speculation. The Russians are very close to that area, and probably they can attack with tanks the first buildings in this area, and they can see from tanks this area, but no updates, no reason to believe that the Russians have already entered the outskirts of that settlement. The Ukrainians still control Sinkovka. As we discussed in the videos, the Russians are trying to encircle this area, trying to move along the Skol River and trying to bypass this settlement along the road on the eastern part of the settlement. But for now, without any progress. The Russians published at least 3 videos how they managed to discover and to destroy the Ukrainian artillery system. On this video we see how the Russians destroyed the Ukrainian Polish Crab artillery system somewhere in the forest. As a result of strike, that system was destroyed. Another video how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian M109 Paladin artillery system. It's the United States of America production artillery system, which was discovered by the Russians somewhere in the vicinity of Kupiansk and destroyed as a result of artillery fire. And we have another video of destroyed armored vehicles somewhere in the vicinity of Berestova. So we see that the Russians continue counter-artillery duels, trying to suppress the Russian artillery, and only after suppressing the artillery system they will start attacking and clearing this area with drones, and after that, at the third stage of offensive operation, they will launch tanks and the infantry. Very interesting update we got from the Ukrainian side. They have adopted the Brigade General Gnatov Andrei Viktorovich as the head of defense operation of Kupiansk. He is the person of Syrsk, he is the head of infantry army. This person was he participated in the operation of defense of Bakhmut. He also took part in the operation of counter-offensive operation in Bakhmut, and currently this person was adopted as the main person who will be responsible for the Battle of Kupiansk. He also has a nickname of Bakhmut Meat Grinder or something, Bakhmut Butcher. So we'll see whether the general of battles of Bakhmut can do something on the Kupiansk front line. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 65 soldiers, 5 armored vehicles, and 6 artillery systems. The Ukrainians lost Gvozdika, D30, Msta B, the German PWZ 2000 and 2 Krabs. So as you can see, the losses of artillery systems was very heavy from the Ukrainian side. And I think that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.